All right, we reconvene from executive session into open session to act as deemed appropriate in city council's discretion regarding, and are we ready? Thumbs up. All right, A, consultation with legal counsel concerning any regular meeting agenda item requiring confidential attorney-client advice.
No action.
B, city manager performance evaluation.
No action.
C, consultation with legal counsel regarding the purchase of real property located at 20100 Don Drive.
No action.
And D, consultation with legal counsel regarding the purchase of real property from Bob Mickey.
No action.
All right, the regular meeting council is now beginning. Tanner, please note, we have all of our council members here. Yourself, Josh, Danny, our police chief, Aaron, our attorney. Darn it, Stan, sorry, Stan.
We have a
IT,
glitch. Oh, how are you gonna fix it?
we have our engineer, Eric, we have Roy, Development Services, we have Star, and I believe that's everybody. And Stan, we have no picture on our monitors.
If you'd have remembered his name, we'd probably do it.
And just a reminder for council, some of the people at home are having trouble hearing us, so please make sure your microphones are down and you're speaking into the microphone. All right, if you would, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. and the Texas flags.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. All right, we begin with citizen comments. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing other than factual responses to specific questions, any items not on the agenda. I have one person that has signed up to speak. So we will start with that person, and it's Mr. Bob Mickey.
I'd just like to take up with him.
If you would, sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Robert Mickey, 210 Flightline Road, Lago, Vista.
Thank you.
There've been some chronic problems at the airport that I'd like to address. One is the fuel hose recoil has been broken
Vandalized?
more than once and still isn't fixed. Also the static line is saying it doesn't recoil. The other thing is the reflectors that were put down as part of the original, or of the last, or one of those capital improvement things, they're ones on the little place to keep people from driving off the edge of the upper ramp and so forth. And just to warn people about the things, those haven't been glued down since they snapped off. They're kind of roaming around the airport. I kind of collect them and stick them in places,
All right.
like in the porta potty. And the other thing is that the tie-down cable in the middle of the ramp has chains. And people drive cars over them and so forth. Over the years, I've tried to keep a screw or something in there so that people can actually chain the plane down some way other than tying the chain, tying the chain with the cords. So
Right.
Anyway, so I guess, so there's been just kind of a lack of maintenance. I'd like to actually have someone do something about that other than me putting bolts in the chain and then they don't put the nuts back on and then they roll around and then they're gone. Anyway,
Okay.
just general maintenance type things. I think things like lights and some other stuff. There's also been a very chronic problem of the phone that runs to the AWOS. Occasionally when it's rainy and so forth, that gets so noisy that it almost works. And I don't know what's going on, everybody keeps complaining about it taking a long time to actually get the phone to answer. Now, my understanding is that that's the only use of the phone lines that run to that east side of the airport. I don't think there are any hangars over there that actually have a hardwired phone line. And I think it's kind of one of those things that phone company doesn't really care, because we're the only ones that complain. And I know they complain about. So, I don't know.
And that's to the
It's
AWAC
just
system?
general, those were just the general airport maintenance type thing. I don't think there's anything really there, really safety things, other than things might get loose on them and so forth. But anyway, I mean, it's a pilot's responsibility, but still, we should give them the tools.
Okay.
Right,
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Fuel oils is a hazard.
All right, again, that's the only person I have signed up. Is there anybody who would like to address council at this time? All right. We will move into public hearings and possible action. First consideration, I'm going to, please note, this is the first consideration. So we will, I'm sorry. As I was, I'm ahead of myself. Items of community interest. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the City Council may report on any of the following items: expressions of thanks, gratitude, and condolences, information regarding holiday schedule, recognition of individuals, reminders regarding City Council events, reminders regarding community events, or health and safety announcements. And I don't really have anything other than our budget calendar, which I believe is posted on the website for everybody to see. That's all I have is our budget calendar so for everybody, if you want to come to our budget hearings and stuff, please note the calendar is online, so you can see those dates. Anybody have anything else?
No. I don't know.
Sir?
Do you have anything?
No, sir.
All right, now, we're going to move into public hearings, possible action. First consideration. So please note, again, all of these are first consideration. I recommend not taking action on any of these except for one. I do have one that is a little bit time sensitive. That is item number 6. And because it is time sensitive, I'm going to start with that one. And we will discuss it, and it will be open for possible action. So number 6, the Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing to consider ordinance number 19-08-01-04, an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending Table B of Chapter 14, the zoning ordinance, to add contractor, builder, or subcontractor as a listed use permitted by right or with a special use permit approval in various zoning districts. Now we'll open the public hearing at 6:39 PM. Staff presentation.
Yes, sir. This was in response to initially one application, but it was followed up shortly thereafter by another application where we had 2 builders that wanted to relocate to Lago Vista and open an establishment. And we knew we had some builders here in town, but when we looked at the zoning ordinance, that wasn't actually a listed use. Fairly typically, these guys had a minor amount of office space, but quite a bit of, in addition to that, quite a bit of storage and or of materials and or a shop, if you will, for, doing various things that they might take out in the field to facilitate what they do for a living. Initially, we told the guys that, that they would need to, adhere to the most onerous of the uses and apply for C2, C4, or light industrial zoning. However, they were both preferring to locate, particularly in one case, a guy had a piece of property that he had a cabinet shop right next door and a very large contractor right up the street that were located in the C1 district. And after an awful lot of consultation with an awful lot of people, we realized that C2 in an inappropriate location was opening up a can of worms that we really didn't want to open up. Mm-hmm. For example, even though neither one of these guys intended to use the outside portion of their property to store anything, if we rezoned it to C2, they would have that right. Moreover, with traditional zoning, these guys didn't have to develop what they showed us as part of the application. They could sell it to somebody else, and these guys could do any number of things that might not be appropriate in these locations. This is a tool that's in our zoning ordinance. It's not, in our opinion, the best tool. Ultimately, we'd like to get to, design review for all commercial development in Lago Vista on the assumption that there is no such location that's not very close or adjacent to residential property. And ultimately, all of those things should get this level of scrutiny. But as an interim measure, we do have this tool called a special use permit. And the idea was to use it to say, look, you can go into these uses where you won't cause a problem no matter what your building looks like. But if you're going to locate here, we want to be able to regulate your use of your property and scrutinize it to make sure that it's compatible with what's around it, nearby residences in particular.
Okay.
Comments, questions?
This has gone through planning and zoning?
Yes, sir, it did, and it was unanimously. And in fact, both the gentlemen, we had talked to them a while back, and they agreed to withdraw their application pending the result of this ordinance.
Anybody else? All right, this is a public hearing. It is open to the citizens, so if anybody would like to comment, you may do so at this time. No? All right, I will close the public hearing at 6:43 PM. And it is now open for council discussion or action.
Mr. Mayor, with P and Z approving this, and it sounds like something that we need to get done now, I would make a motion that we approve ordinance number 19-08-01-04.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous. All right, so now we will go back to item number 3. The Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing to consider ordinance number 19-08-01-01, an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending the official map and ordinance numbers 11-01-20-01 and 18-08-16-02, both amendments to the Hollows PDD Plan Development District, established previously by ordinance numbers 05-01-06-01, 06-12-07-02, 07-01-04-01, and 07-12-06-02, in order to amend certain aspects of the applicable development regulations dash. Excuse me. All right, I will open the public hearing at 6:45 PM. And is Roy the lead on this one as well? Okay,
Yes, sir.
I gotta go to number 3.
We encourage the Hollows, as you're probably aware, they are revising much of their development plans for the portion that's in Lago Vista. They have come to you in the past, for example, for their Discovery Center to make that minor change. We were encouraging them to do it more comprehensively so that list of ordinances doesn't get even more long. But anyway, there were certain things that they just quite couldn't get together in time. As a result, they ended up limiting this to 2 items, basically. One is increase in the number of signs that they need a slight increase to avoid coming for a sign variance each and every time. The design of the signs didn't change. They just originally they didn't ask for enough of them. Now that they've thought about it, the other thing is that they intend to market the lots that on the streets that are intersecting Ming Trail for what they call active adults. They're going to have an amenity center, may even be age restricted to who lives there, although I'm not sure how they're going to do that exactly. But what they're asking us is because of the market they're chasing, the builder was more comfortable having the right to, if he wanted to, gate those streets. And so what we did was, and we encouraged them, quite frankly, that they were going to put gates to maybe reduce the number of streets and connect them better and not use quite so many cul-de-sacs. And they'll probably end up doing that when they get down to platting those lots. But for the time being, what we had to do was devise a method where we could approve the design of those gated entries. We decided that the best way to handle that was to delegate the specific design and any encroachments in the public right-of-ways at the actual gates to the city engineer, but that the required maintenance agreement for the streets and the sidewalks that are behind the gate is going to have to come back to you. Otherwise, in our opinion, that would have been an inappropriate delegation. So the ordinance would require them, if they do it to a gate, to design all the normal safety features and all that, and the city engineer could approve that. But then we require a maintenance agreement for the streets, and that would come back to you guys for approval. But only under those conditions would they be able to gate those streets.
So, looking at the signage, allow sign surface area 90 square feet. Is that what the monument is now?
I believe that the monuments are the same. They just added one more monument. Okay, now that's not the monument that's on the right-of-way that's actually outside this development, but apparently there's a monument internal, and they're adding one more monument.
Internal.
Inside, not at the front gate.
Okay.
That's not even, if you look at the map, the front entry is not even part of the legal description of this development. That's outside of that.
Okay.
So I don't see anything about adding a monument. It says keep the 2 residential monumentation subdivision signs.
Well, but, and that was, that may be in part of my notes, and that changed.
Okay.
Originally, they talked about it, and then when I looked at their map, they had a third one, but their map didn't include the one outside at the gate shouldn't be counted. It's not in the legal description of this property. So, why are we talking about something that's really not part of the ordinance? So it's 2, but one of them is new.
Okay.
Now, that was me straightening out their description over time, but and you're looking at my red notes as opposed to the ordinance. Yeah, the thing that's correct is the ordinance. The red notes took some while to get them to explain exactly what they were after. The ordinance, when you look at that, the section, I believe it's 4, with the new language, that's the actual description of what they're doing. And if you compare that to the old one, you'll see that they've added a monument sign that wasn't there before on any map. The amenity signs weren't really covered because without this request, they would have to meet the ordinance requirement, and every one of them would have to come back to you for a variance. For example, the letters that they want to put on the Discovery Center, even though they're attached to the building, they're bigger than what our ordinance provides for. And the ordinance contemplates that if you're in a PDD and you want something different, that you'll ask for it in the PDD.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. Now, whether you like the number, that's your call.
What, page 46, and you may want to bring this up. You may want to bring up page,
I'm sorry, I don't have the document.
oh goodness,
We'll provide a document to.
wow.
Okay. I can probably remember it if you tell me which one it is.
On the website.
Yeah, Josh, I know you can get that fixed. Page 46 has a bunch of says sales office sign, new amenity signs, add two wayfinding sign locations.
Right. And
So I'm kind of keying on that map, and I could bring it down to you if that's
Yeah, no,
okay, Mayor.
Frank,
And that was
he's trying to get the map up.
the one that was the one that they submitted and they changed their mind about 10 times. The one that it accurately reflects what's in the ordinance is the one that is in the new ordinance, which is, let me give you the right page of their exhibit,
Okay,
27.
page 27?
Yes, Exhibit B of the ordinance. That is the one I got them to finally correct, and that matches what's in the ordinance.
What was that page number?
46.
27.
27.
Oh, the map is on 46.
No,
No, the
this
correct
is.
Yeah, but that's,
correct one's on
those are the
27.
maps they submitted, and I tried to show,
27.
those are the old ordinance that was approved, and I tried to show what they were changing, but that was a moving target throughout this process. This is what they, this is what they finally settled on, yes, this is what we want.
Okay, I'm looking at page 27.
Right, should be called.
What are they adding?
minor gates.
The gates where the check marks are there,
Okay,
okay? All the amenity signs were there. The
where there's a star.
the two stars, right,
That's the wayfaring.
right. The wayfinding signs, they increased the number from 5 to 7, as I recall.
And so this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Don't miss the one.
7, okay?
Right, and it was 5,
Yeah,
and there are two
Okay.
new locations. You look at the little, they used it looks like a little eyebrow.
right.
The one at the lower right, that's supposedly there. The new one is the one that's supposedly closest to the Trailhead Club. That's where they're adding the second monument sign.
Okay,
The third, the one that we all associate with is outside the legal of this, which is the red line on this map.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it took me a while to get there too, to get them to, because the number kept changing. Every day it was, oh, it's this. And I said, well, and explain yourself, make sure I understand what you're doing. And every time I'd ask a question, the answer would change. But this is now correct, this one.
is the hollows, generally speaking, getting more dense?
That is their long-term intent. Now, this part that's off Ming Trail, they were originally going to ask for a minor increase in the density that was not so much numbers, but lot sizes being smaller to accommodate their market. The builder finally decided that he doesn't really need that. These are 50-foot lots.
But we're not doing that tonight.
No, and he's not going to change that.
Okay,
But there is a future intent to look at increasing the density. I thought that was going to come to you with this, but they couldn't get their act together to define it accurately enough.
okay.
And there were a number of other things that they just, they thought they could get there and they didn't. So they just pulled it.
Roy,
Hopefully you can get them to time up to the gated streets. That's a good idea.
Let me put it this way. I mean, I'm holding them to a standard that they're not used to for PDDs about specificity. They're used to just say, well, I'm going to put 100 new lots somewhere. I'm not taking that. And so that's what's causing the delays. When I pin them down, I say, I want a drawing. Show me where and show me how big. And I want to describe exactly the design standards.
That's how most PDDs are done.
Well, I understand, but
Okay,
they
all right.
weren't used to that for some reason.
those cul-de-sacs don't look very big to me.
Yeah, no, and I brought that to their attention, that that's a silly way to gate an area.
Right.
You know, with,
Well,
and they're
it's-
going to look at that.
It's not showing the whole cul-de-sac, it's
No.
just showing the location
The
of where
location.
they want to put the gate.
It is, but we have and seen like concept plans that they've shown. For example, they have a big board they bring around, and it is a bunch of cul-de-sacs that hopefully will go bye-bye.
But I mean, is there going to be enough area similar to what, like Waterford, you know, when you turn into Waterford, there's.
Oh, yeah. And that's why the
I can't
the
really-
language about the design of the gated entries, a way to turn around without blocking traffic.
Traffic and
a place
everything
to
else.
call to get let in if you don't have the code, all of those things. That some will be on private property, some will be in the right of way. You know, the idea is you trust the city engineer to approve those.
But there's enough room to do.
Well, I mean, they have to. I mean,
Okay.
that's part of what he'll do, is make sure what they design is safe.
And then,
And there's some standard, what I call best practices for that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
once these gates go up, if they go up, who's in charge of taking care of the maintenance of that road?
Them, and that agreement's coming back to you guys. We're not pre-approving an agreement we've never seen or delegating that approval.
There used to
Well-
be some phraseology in the subregs about that,
Well,
Right.
If they put up a
about
gate,
private streets.
wouldn't it become a private, yeah, that's what I'm
Well,
saying.
that's what I'm saying, and they have not platted these streets, but if they do and they want them to be public streets, and they're gonna have to take care of them, even if they are public streets, and the streets and the sidewalks and anything else behind them.
Well, could the gates be, this is a legal question, could the gates be approved with the stipulation that if the gates go up, the streets automatically become private? And they must be responsible for maintenance, anything behind the gate?
I think that we would require that as part of the PDD. If there's limited access, that would be a negotiating point, because otherwise
Right.
we have issues with
Right.
accessibility for a number of things. And, you know, we don't have access.
But why does that have to be a separate deal from
Well,
approving the
it's
gates? Saying
right.
you approve the gates, but you must do this.
Well, but if you put the gates up, and once again, I guess, you know, now that you bring it up, it probably would have been better to amend that ordinance to say they'll either be platted and dedicated as private streets or a development or a maintenance agreement acceptable to city council. One of the two.
I'm on tracking with you.
You know?
We're-
I mean, I don't understand why I'm approving a gate and then I'm gonna have to come back
Yeah.
and wait for them to bring me a maintenance agreement. And then we have to say,
Yes, sir. And I think there's language in the subregs that talk about how you handle private streets that happens when one plats, and we don't see that. So the council or the city has approved a bunch of private streets in the past, that Montechino, for instance, and the maintenance agreement never went to the council.
Because they're not public streets.
Well, yeah, but we don't, the document about who maintains it, I'm going to get too deep in the weeds, and that's not what we're proving tonight, but my point is, I don't think we have to see, the council does not have to see the maintenance agreement.
Not on a private street.
Right.
It's only if it were a public street, and they're gonna maintain a public street.
But I think we still have to designate the designation that they are a private street and they're responsible.
If it's gated, it can't be public. That's your point, Dave.
yeah, I know. So are you saying they wanna keep Ming Trail a public street?
No, not Main Trail, the streets that
The
access
cul-de-sacs.
off of Main Trail.
Those are, when we say there can be gated, they're going to get platted as private streets. They can't be public,
That's correct.
That's what
and they have to maintain
And they
them.
have to maintain.
Yes.
The HOA, and there
Right.
used to be language in the subregs that deals with that, about what they have to say on the plat and what they have to give the city to ensure that they take care of it.
Right, and if that's the case, I mean, they don't really need to put that in the PDD at all. if they're gonna be private streets, would be my understanding, gates or otherwise.
Yeah, they're gonna plat them as private. They're gonna show up as
There won't be
private
any-
on the
right.
plat.
And there won't be any encroachment in the right of way at all.
Right. You,
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay.
not with them.
Okay.
Don't bring a maintenance agreement back.
No,
Well, right, but, and amend the ordinance to say, and just maybe even remind them, any gated street will be private.
Yeah, I would like to see it
Right.
clarified in the
It's kind of
ordinance.
redundant, but,
Yeah,
just so they'll know it, because it was their request.
To have a gated public street.
Yep.
A gated public street or a gated
Boy,
private
these
street?
guys are,
See, that's what's confusing to me.
can't have it both ways.
You can't have both ways. Either it's a private street and they can gate it, or it's a public street and they're gonna have to tell us something different.
at the next meeting when this is brought back up, and we'll have that clarification in the ordinance.
We'll have the ordinance with an amendment to it, and you can
Thank
You
you.
can see it and
Okay,
look at it and say, approve it the way you want it.
All right.
thank you.
Any more questions from the council? All right, the public hearing is open, so questions from citizens? Now open. All right. Well, at this time, we will leave the public hearing open, and we will move to number 4. The Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing to consider ordinance number 19-08-01-02, an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending the official zoning map by changing the zoning district of lot 11337 Alpha Barcade Ranches Plat 11 located at 9211 Barcade Ranch Road from R1 Alpha Single Family Residential to C4 Commercial Airport. And I will open the public hearing at 7:02 PM.
Mayor, I was going to start this one as the applicant for the city and as a staff update. This property is property that the city recently purchased from Jim Awalt. It was purchased off of Barcade Ranch Road. You already read everything about that property. What staff or what the city requested was to switch this over to C4 Commercial. And the rationale there is, I think we got a map in here, it shows you that's a similar use as to what is in that region. So at the airport, potentially this property is a pilot's lounge, which is something we're working on now. And then eventually, it could be a hangar space, it could be a lounge, it could be a restaurant facility, I mean, it could be a number of different things. But what our goal was to request a change in the zoning so that it would fit the surrounding properties and provide for the use that we see as most effective at the airport.
One of the unusual things about it from a staff perspective, even though technically the table B, the use table, lists city facilities and has a check mark in every zoning district that exists, but I kind of, like the idea of the city acquiring, the appropriate zoning for the area that it's in. This particular piece of property, you can see on there, has a couple of easements to the benefit of the adjacent property owners so they can drive planes across it, which would be a little unusual for a single-family residence. So we decided we would seek the same zoning that's on virtually every location that has a hangar. There's a handful, perhaps even a handful is an exaggeration. There are a few that are hangar residences that with an RRA designation, but most of them by far are C4. I think these handful right here are the only ones that aren't. And like I said, the 3 of them include easements to drive planes across them so you can get to the city-owned taxiway and ramp. So This seemed to be clear cut that this was not only the appropriate basis without a building being on it, but now that we are putting a facility on it, it seemed time to make it consistent with the zoning. And regardless of our ability to ignore the use requirements, we think this is the appropriate action.
Thank you. Questions from council? All right, public hearing is open. So anyone from the city that would like to comment? Yes, sir. Please again, state your name and address.
It's Robert Mickey. I own 210 Flight Line, which is in the bottom right corner of this. And I also own the corner lot, which you discussed earlier, which is the lot immediately south. And then I also own the lot that's 100 feet north of this property. I don't see any problem with this. The only thing is that I don't think double-wide trailers are allowed on C4 property. So while you're doing this, you ought to actually fix that too. I mean, I don't really want a bunch of trailers up at the airport, but what you have there right now doesn't fit the old ordinance or your proposed ordinance. I guess that's my only comment. The taxiway easements are there for the orange ones are RRA, and there might be one off the map to the north. I don't know if that one's been changed. But anyway, that's how those, the RRA, I think, is residential one airport. And so that's why those easements are there.
Right.
Anyway, but I don't have any problem. I own 2 out of the 6 lots that are around that.
Rest assured, the city facilities will be upgraded from what's currently there, but we would like to have something.
It's looking better.
Yeah.
The old double.
We have
Thank you.
we have a demand for something, so it's a temporary.
Yeah.
I know that y'all have heard the word temporary before, but yes, our plans are to definitely improve that facility. Anyone else? All right, I will leave this public hearing open as well, and we will move to number 5. The Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing to consider ordinance number 19-08-01-03, an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending section 7.30 and table A of chapter 14, the zoning ordinance to correct manifest errors in the development regulations pertaining to certain property within Lago Vista Travis Plaza subdivision and certain property within or adjacent to Lago Vista Barcay Airport subdivision and Lago Vista Air Park subdivision. And I will open the public hearing at 7:08 PM.
This one came to my attention when we had the first person trying to develop on Dawn. And it became apparent when we started looking at their building design that none of the buildings that are in this area right around City Hall that's called Lago Vista Travis Plaza actually comply with the development regulations. But there was at least a note that suggested that somebody tried to make that correction. They just didn't get all of it. So I went back and Aaron and I talked about whether we were going to have one property owner apply for 20 variances or whether we should fix this or not. We decided we should probably put forth the effort and fix it. While I was there, I noticed that there was a similar set of footnotes trying to describe the way setbacks work up at the airport. And it made a reference to the plats, and I didn't understand they even used a word that I don't really think exists. But I got with Chris and tried to figure out what they were getting to. And we pulled the plats out, and it became apparent that the subdivisions up at the airport has some holes in the property that are unplatted, presumably because the property owners weren't around and didn't participate. So what they were trying to do is describe where the setbacks were on which lots, and they didn't quite describe those correctly. So I also got the plats out, got the numbers right, and fixed that while I was there. So that's the other thing you got in front of you. And since then, by the way, we've gotten lots of calls to develop up and down Dawn Drive, so it wouldn't be just this one original person. Now, the strange thing is it does not include the 6 lots on Dawn Drive that are between the road to the police station or the private road to the police station and I guess the school, I guess is.
Private road.
Right, yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's, it is a public road? Okay. Yeah, it shows as just a piece of private property, but it's been dedicated since then, the plats are wrong?
Platted.
There you go. Anyway, I didn't see the plat, so that's why I was referring to it. But anyway, to make a long story short, those lots are part of a different subdivision. Somebody's trying to acquire and develop those. They would probably need some variances, but that'll probably be a one-time thing rather than a number of lots being involved. So it's not quite as onerous on him to, and he may replat those into one big piece of property if he can acquire them all. So it does not fix his problem. So don't be shocked if you see something separate that we didn't solve every problem. We just solved the most common ones.
And this goes from the police station
Well, it
west,
includes back here.
west to,
The property that's facing the other way that doesn't have a front yard or anything else, there's specific number of lots. The first set of numbers are the ones that are on Dawn Drive. The other ones are the ones that are like City Hall, back here.
So C6 through 69, C?
That's Dawn.
That's Dawn, okay,
The other ones that are named are the ones back here.
gotcha. Gotcha.
any further questions, comments from council?
Mm-mm.
All right. The public hearing is open, so if there's anybody who would like to address this at this time, please do so.
I mean, I don't understand what they're talking about on the airport subdivision, airport subdivisions. I don't know what, I mean, you were talking about,
I'll give you a copy of it.
oh, okay.
So it's,
What there is, it's describing where the front yards are. And on taxiways, there is no front yard. And it varies depending on where the lot is, whether it's on, the lots that are on the east side of the airport, on those separate streets. Some of those have frontage in it, and every lot is a little different the way the setbacks are. And like I said, they had a little trouble because describing where all these things are, and the error that we corrected had to do with the fact that there's these unplatted lots that are in between other lots. So you had to describe what they're adjacent to, and that's what we fixed. It inaccurately described what it was adjacent to. It used wrong numbers.
But it doesn't change anything for them
No,
up
there's
there?
nothing substantive. All we did was correct errors. And like I said, I think the intent on Dawn Drive was to do what we did.
Okay.
They just, maybe didn't go through every single, thing that had to be changed. Because, for example, they said, well, on Dawn Drive, it's a 10-foot setback. And they understood that there was a problem. They just didn't get them all.
Got it.
all right, anyone else? All right, we will leave this public hearing open as well. And we will go into action items. Again, this is the first hearing on these action items, council. So it says discussion, consideration, and possible action, but for all of these, this is the first time they have come to the agenda. And so this is the first time we are considering or discussing them. Number 7, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding ordinance number 19-08-01-06, an ordinance of the city of Lago Vista, Texas, authorizing the transfer of funds in the amount of $580,000 from the general fund reserve budget to the park fund budget, providing a severability clause, savings clause, and providing for effective date and open meeting clauses.
Mayor, if I may, this item is something we've talked about for a little over a year and a half. The city received 2 grants from Texas Parks and Wildlife as a part of the development of our new city park, of which is unnamed. The first grant, the city used the property as a match. For the second grant, we used a cash match. And so total, we would need the estimated $580,000 to match the grants and still have a little bit of work to do on the overall project. What staff is requesting is that council go ahead and take money from the general fund reserve account and place that into the park fund so that we would have those dollars earmarked for when it's time to expend those dollars, we expend them out of that fund. And as you stated, this is the first time this has been formally presented to council.
I thought we decided to name it to Josh Ray.
I thought so too, Mayor, but I checked the minutes and it was never approved for some reason. I have that written down, though, if you need it for reference.
So this is basically just a second engagement to get to qualify for the grant money that the state is giving us.
Yeah, Mayor, yeah, so what we would do is although we satisfied the requirement by having it in our general fund balance or our reserve, what we're showing is we're allocating those dollars set aside. We've talked about this on a number of different occasions in terms of making sure we set those dollars aside so that people understand those dollars will be there instead of at some point us coming back and saying we need to magically just pull out $1.5–2 million out of the fund. So it's just best that when we say we're going to set aside dollars as a match, we go ahead and set those aside. For this action, whenever it's considered, Mayor, we do have an ordinance that we've included that just shows the official transfer from one fund to another fund.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so the $500,000 for the match has already been approved by council when we were doing the application for the grant.
Right.
So that money has already been approved.
Right.
This is
They just haven't
basically
shifted the money.
Right.
Got it.
Mayor, accordingly, I think this is just a technical deal. I'm not sure since we visited about it and described what we're doing, I would move to approve ordinance number 19-08-01-06.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I would like to note, because this is our first hearing on this, our first discussion, if we do take action on it, I do have to allow the public to speak tonight, but, I like to put things out here so that the public can see this, watch it on, if they're not watching council meetings tonight, they can go home and see this. And then at the next meeting, come back and if they have any questions or comments, allow them to do that. I mean, in this case, yes, it is just an administration thing, but that's my thoughts on all these action items tonight, actually, so.
But it has been previously approved.
Right. But I do have, at this time, I do have a motion and a second. So any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. Number 8, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding recommendation of contract award for the construction of the Boggy Ford Rehab Phase 1 project and authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will apologize ahead of time. This is going to get a little bit confusing. The city advertised for bids, and we received bids on July 16th. We got one bid, which was a local contractor, and the bid was for the amount of just shy of $300,000, as you will see there, $293,472. The city at the time, or as of right now, has just under $200,000 in funding for this project, so we're still pretty far off. So this is where it gets confusing. So this is actually the second bid that was advertised and was open. There was another bid that we advertised and opened about a month ahead of this one, and the bids came in, the lowest came in at $700,000, incredibly high compared to what we had budgeted. So in an effort looking at, see what the budget amount was and even negotiate with the contractor was impossible to bring the amount down to where we needed it. So at staff level, we issued rejection of all bids and returned all the bid securities at the time and went forward with rebid. And it has come to light recently that that might have not quite been procedurally correct. So to clarify that, along with this recent bid, we are recommending that we reject all bids and proceed a different route. And then the route that staff is proposing is to use city staff to do a modified project to rehab Boggy Ford. And we're talking about Phase 1 rehab, which is just basically what you're seeing here on Thunderbird, just removing those bad spots so that you can come back and overlay the entire thing. So I will pass out a revised agenda cover, and also what you'll see in the back is the bid summary of the project and all the bids that were rejected.
Mayor, on this project, while Eric's handing it out, so our goal this entire year, as we're working on different streets, has been to do a two-phase reconstruction project on Boggy Ford. We think that the traffic level on Boggy is significant and that it should include I would say, a major renovation project. So the whole time we've had this plan that we will do this in a two-phase, one to do structure repair, and then the second phase to go back and do the resurfacing of the entire project. We want to go from start to finish on Boggy, and you'll see from some of our thoughts and comments that it's valuable. Our ability to go back with our city crew is actually fantastic, because what we'll do on a much larger scale is we'll go back and do the improvements on these patches throughout Boggy so that it is then ready for the resurfacing project. There's a lot of cost that we would effectively be able to save. If you look at just the numbers that Eric has on the tab sheets, even from the one inside the packet showing $293,000, significant savings that we would receive with city crews doing it. All manpower basically is factored inside of your operating budget. Your mobilization costs theoretically are factored inside. What you have is staff time and then materials, and that's how you reduce the total cost for a project of this size.
All right, so if we take no action tonight, then at the next, on the 15th, you can bring all this together, we can reject all the bids, and then you'll have the scope of work for the city crews and everything that we just discussed, and we can all look at all that at one point.
Yes, sir, we can.
I do want to pass around These were the original bids that were submitted. I didn't want to make copies of every one of those.
And we'll have those available, Mayor, just to review. And this is a good example of this, not that we've not said this over and over before, but this is a good example of this two-phase process, this two-step process, so that people in the community, if they see just the rejection of bids, may get disheartened on the fact of, hey, we're not going to get this project done. We're going to find the way to make this improvement project a reality based on the split cost of an in-house project and then a contractor project. It's been a priority for the fiscal year for us. We have been working on other streets this year. You've seen the crews work. We do have, I think we're at 10 resurface projects already this year, potentially have 2 additional projects that'll be resurfaced, so maybe even 12 individual streets that are being completely resurfaced. It's very exciting, but really the beauty of it is when you do something the nature of Boggy, that's when people are really feeling the impact of the program. And so to be able to bring this back and find a means by which we can get this completed. Boggy's going to be one of those that major street program that's really going to impact a lot of people going to and from their homes. And so we will stage this hopefully strategically so that we minimize the impact while we're doing the repairs. And then as you see a resurfacing project, you try and you'll be moving traffic from one side of the road to the other side of the road, one-way traffic at certain times. So we'll be jumping into that project similar to how a Highland was handled, but hopefully a little more effectively this time around.
All right. So, go ahead.
Great work, guys, that we can save 100 grand using our own stuff. And the only way we could do that is because y'all put together the wherewithal to enable us to do that. So that's a big deal. Is this bond money or money that's in other words, the funding for it, was it bonded?
No, sir, this is not
So
a
it's-
bond project.
So all of so there's going to be you're just flat saving in the Public Works or Street Department's budget, 100 grand,
Yes, sir.
which means you got 100 grand you could do something else with.
The plan would be to allocate that for additional street
Thank you.
repairs.
Okay.
So these general fund breakdown, would this be out of the street department or would this be?
So, Mayor, the way this one's laid out now, I believe these funds are out of the street department. They're not in it's out of reserve, so it'd be a reserve project out of it. My apologies. Then for next year, so we're looking at 2 different things for next year. Remember, as we said, we've got the street fund that's going to have the materials and the allocations there for the basic repairs. And then on the capital, we would allocate the reserve for that capital level of projects for streets.
Okay, again, starting September 1, I cannot prohibit the public from speaking. We missed that on the last one. I apologize for that, but getting in practice, so if the public would like to speak on this item, can do so at this time. No? All right. So my recommendation is no action.
Correct.
But at this time, if there's anybody that would like to take action.
Yeah, well, we need him to bring us
Right.
all the necessary information, so.
Okay. So we will move to number 9. Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding a 380 Economic Development Agreement with Lago Vista Village and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
Mayor, on this item, I prefer to walk you through this real quick. Previous council approved a 380 Economic Development Agreement with Lago Vista Village. That agreement included a function for the actual property owner and then a function for the actual tenants in that agreement. Although council approved that document, It was never signed by the property owner. This council looked back at some of the requests, made a couple of text amendments based on conversation with legal, and then we sent that back to Lago Vista Village to consider and sign off on before it came back to council. They made a change on the name on the document just for the ownership, and they had another question. The document was not approved by Lago Vista Village in time for today's meeting. So staff, we're asking that you table this item until the next council meeting, which I believe is August 15th.
Got it.
All right. So on that recommendation, I'm going to make a motion that we postpone this agenda item until August 15th.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Sorry. Is there anyone in the public who would like to address this before we? All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion is postponed. Number 10, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding ordinance number 19-08-01-05, an ordinance ordering and establishing procedures for the 2019 general election in the city of Lago Vista to elect officials for mayor, place 1, place 3, and place 5, providing for notice of the election, providing election precinct and polling places, providing for early voting, providing an effective date and open meetings clause, and providing for related matters.
Mayor, this item is everything you just read. We do have the mayor position and 3 council member positions that are open. This is a first hearing, Mayor, but I would request if council could consider this so that we ensure that we are satisfying the requirements for the election law. We do have some time, but if anything's clear cut, this one's clear cut.
This is clear cut.
All right,
Just a request.
and fairly time sensitive.
Yes, sir.
All right, questions, comments? Public, questions, comments? I remembered that time. All right, hearing none.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve this ordinance number 19-08-01-05.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries. Unanimous. All right, number 11. Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding a vote on adoption of a proposal to set a 2019 tax rate of 0.65 for the city of Lago Vista and schedule public hearings and take necessary action.
Mayor, this item we briefly touched on during the budget workshop today. There's a couple things that we would like for council to take action on. This is the first hearing for this item, but this item basically sets, as we refer to it, as a not to exceed tax rate for our city council budget. But more importantly, it schedules those public hearings for August 15th, September 5th, and September 12th. Those coincide with our budget calendar, and they're important so that we are telling our citizens that these are the dates that we're going to hold those public hearings, at which time the council will be able to consider a final adoption of a tax rate and eventually final adoption of the city budget.
Thank you. And yes, this is our first hearing, but because we have a proposed date of August 15th for the first public hearing, I'm going to recommend that we do take action on this one at this time. So right now it's open for questions or comments. Public? Questions, comments? All right, hearing none, I will accept a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt the proposal to set the tax rate at 0.65.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second.
We got to do the dates.
I'm sorry.
And, well, dates correspond with our budget process.
Mayor, I would just, if the counselor would approve that, it would be to amend his to include those 3 dates
Oh.
as public hearings.
I will amend my proposal to include those 3 dates, August 15th, 5 September, and 12 September.
Second.
All right, so I have the amended motion and the second. Any further discussion? I would like to point out this is a not to exceed of 0.65. So it will not go up from what it has been for the past 7 years. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. Got what number I'm on now?
The consent
We're
agenda.
into the consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are to be considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We have number 12, approval of the July 18th, 2019 council meeting minutes and acceptance of the comprehensive master plan subcommittee report.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Go ahead.
There were some corrections that were pointed out
On the minutes or,
on the minutes, yes. Sorry.
I withdraw my motion. Which means we,
do you know what
So we
those were?
need to pull the council meeting minutes and have that done separately. Okay. I did not see
Was
those.
it wordsmithing or was it?
On number 5 and number 6,
Uh-huh.
where it was stated that the Planning and Zoning Commission met on July 27th, it should be June.
June 27th?
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
all.
Well, can we approve the minutes with just that correction or no?
You can, yeah, you can pull the item and then approve the consent agenda, pull that item, and then consider that item.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to pull it?
yep,
I make a motion that we pull the July 18th, 2019 council meeting minutes.
Right, I have a motion.
Second. Well, Tim, second, or Don? Who did that?
Me.
Tim?
Okay, I've got my motion, I've got my second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the motion has been pulled to discuss separately. All right, so we still have the consent agenda
I make a
to
motion.
approve, and then we have the council meeting to approve separate.
I make a motion to accept the comprehensive master plan update from the subcommittee.
Second.
All right, I have a motion, and the second was by Tim again. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? Hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved unanimous. And now the council meetings that have been pulled, they are open for discussion.
And the only errors were on 5 and 6. And it should be June instead of July. And Mr. Mayor, I'd make a recommendation that we approve the July 18, 2019 council meeting minutes with the change for parts 5 and 6 of the July to June.
All right, I have a motion
Second.
and I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. All right. We move into discussion item, city manager reports.
Maybe just a couple things we want to point out. We did briefly get to touch on the fact that the street rehab program is in our budget document and will be online. We do want to discuss that more when we get into our next budget meeting. We also have the Public Works Capital Projects update that has been placed into the monthly reports online. Want to make sure that people are able to look at that a little more detailed, and then we want to start refining that update plan so it works for people when they're looking at projects, that they're able to follow it a little more. Currently, as it sits, it includes the design milestones, which is something that we do that a lot with internal staff so that we know where the plans are at. And then it does the construction milestones as well. For most of our citizens, I tend to see that that's the more important focus area. But we need to still focus on the fact that on design, you want to know where it's at. A lot of times people don't understand that since it's been approved, why it's not moving through the hopper. And so this report style allows for placing projects within a certain phase of design and construction. So one of the things we're going to do that we've talked about since our last meeting is prepare more comprehensive monthly reports for all of our departments. And those that currently give department reports, great, we'll fine tune those. Those that do not, we want to get that information out so that we're satisfying some of that request through council of making sure that that information's there. So just wanted to point out that capital projects and the street projects there, and then the follow-up to what we said in the workshop on the utility cost of service study. It's very important for us to be able to get this information out to the community when council is able to review it. So hopefully, as soon as we get that information, we'll have the same kind of session where we can have it during a meeting that is videoed so that we can relay that information back through the community and we can start talking about how we fund those projects. The last point is for us to look at scheduling for that next budget discussion. We can do that by email, or we could do it now, Mayor, if we just want to look at it. Just want to, as soon as we can get back to council, I'd like to have that more discussion that gives us potentially a 2 to 3 hour time span at the least.
Is that like a budget retreat or a work session?
Mayor, it could be a retreat, it could be a work session. Either one we can satisfy. I would love to be able to sit down and flesh out a lot more conversations and walk through a lot before we get back to the 15th.
Good.
Well, our
So it's
next
between
agenda
now and the 15th, excuse me.
Let's see, our next agenda item is future meetings, so.
That's great. I'm done then, Mayor.
Okay, I do have a question on the projects.
Go ahead.
Will that also contain information on the funding source for the projects?
Yes, sir. So that's one of the things that we're looking at amending is so we will shift over our format and then we'll put the funding source in between the contract amount and the completion date. We want to leave this section. Our goal is to get as much information on the status and the comments as we can so that it's thorough for people to understand. But what we're trying to do too is tie this document in with the CIP so we're having both the information lines that are parallel, that are the same, that match.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions, comments?
So is it possible to have a workshop like next Thursday, or is it?
I was going to see if the audience had anything for the city manager reports before we move on. All right, so we'll move to future meetings. 15, consider our schedule and any items for future council meetings. So, calendars.
Yeah, Mayor, back to that. I mean, I think I think Thursday's a good day, but I couldn't tell you specifically. I don't know what's scheduled on the 8th. But doesn't matter. We could do whatever hours wise. We could even take some, sounds like P and Z somewhere from the heavens. Okay.
Could we do it off-site and start in the morning?
Between the two council meetings.
I think that's an awesome option too, just depending on what the flexibility
It
of.
just depends on the time.
It just would depend on the time. If you're talking in the evening. When's our planning and zoning? The 7th?
Yes,
Okay,
maybe the next Thursday.
that would be next Wednesday.
On Thursday?
Yeah, that's there
Yeah.
at 2.
So again, Mayor, if the schedules work, and I don't know everyone's schedule, if we could start something in the morning and give us a longer period,
Yeah, I'd rather it be in the daytime so that we can spend the appropriate time to really go over it.
because then that'll give us that following, potentially following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to get the information back to council for the next public hearing in a little bit longer session. And it'll also it would give us the majority of next week to be able to talk to some people in the community that may have questions and bring some of that back to council. So
Ed, do you have to work or no?
If we're doing it the 8th, I'm off all day on the 8th. I don't have my phone with me, I leave it in the office, but I do need to just confirm. But I'm pretty sure I do not have anything scheduled for the 8th. But that would be good. And if I am not mistaken, even though this is a retreat and maybe off-site, it is still a public meeting. So
yes, sir, everything would
we need
be,
to make sure the
public.
location and everything is,
Accessible.
yes.
Does-
So that's something to,
Don, you all right on the 8th?
I'm all good.
so Mayor, what I'll do, if that's good with you, I'll go ahead and send out the email tonight. That way you've all got it, just to go ahead and confirm. We'll confirm the time, the date, and then we'll pick what kind of space we want to set it up. And
Okay.
I heard the weather in Panama was good these days. I don't know anything about Panama, but it sounded fun.
You paying for
do
it?
we have the funds to?
This is you go stag. This is what we're talking about. So if you can only make it down to Jonestown, then you only make it to Jonestown.
It's in the same time zone.
See, it's a start. So I'll send that out tonight, Mayor, just so we get that scheduled.
Okay. Well, it is 7:47. We're done quite early unless we have some more items for executive session. But I would like to make a statement. I don't know for sure that she will show up, but our state representative, Vicki Goodwin, is in town. She is meeting with the local Democrat Party tonight for a dessert with the rep. It was scheduled till 8. Her assistant said they would come by council chambers when they were done. I told her we normally go to 8:30 or later.
Mayor,
Is this your filibuster?
I do
I
have.
am, I am stalling.
Mayor, I'll help you out with the stall.
Oh, man.
Bringing dessert?
She didn't say on
I'm
that.
hungry. I wish they'd bring dinner. I wish we had a Chick-fil-A.
Well, had we known they had coordinated this, we'd have just moved council meetings to the Bluebonnet room and had our council along with them, but,
I do actually have an item for the next
okay.
council meeting.
So we're
Uh,
continuing with number 15.
Yes, sir. I would like to propose that we have a discussion at the next council meeting where we discuss standardizing the requirements for service on our city boards, commissions, and advisory committees. If you look at the requirements for the different committees that we have right now, particularly the advisory committees, the requirements aren't standard. They're quite different. I know that 3 of them are particularly different. So I would like to have a discussion about standardizing them so that the requirements are the same across the board.
Okay.
So if we can
Was that
discuss
not,
that.
was that not clarified in our charter?
No,
No. Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. That's all the stalling I can do for you.
Well, I wasn't really trying to stall. I was just going to say, I'm going to hang around for a little while to see if she shows up. If anybody wants to stick around and
Why don't we just recess?
bend the ear of, well, I don't really want to, I mean, y'all are free to go at any time, but
Do.
She is gonna be driving up on Dottie.
she is. She's coming from the Blue Bonnet. So, yeah, I'm hoping she shows up, so I'm gonna stick around and talk to her. If anybody else would like to join me, please do. Otherwise, do we have anything to be discussed in executive session?
No.
All right, I will call the meeting adjourned at, get my glasses, 7:50 PM. There you go.